Hi, this is Yulia, and you're watching my channel, Rebels and Revolutions. After 5 episodes on the Algerian Revolution of 1954, we are going to explore another fascinating and unfortunately depressing conflict that is known under various names. First Chechen War of 1994, Ichkherian Revolution, etc. Before I started my exploration of this story, I could not even outline the borders of Chechnya on a map. I mean, I knew that it was in the eastern part of the Northern Caucasus, but that was about it. To my defense, few can definitively outline the borders of this territory since it is not an independent country, but part of the Russian Federation. During the Soviet times, it was part of the Chechnya-Ingush Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, within the borders of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, which in turn was a part of the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics. Confused? So was I. Here's an analogy. Just like the US has 50 states, the Soviet Union had 15 republics, governed by the centralized federal government, sort of similar to the federal government of the US, which handled questions of defense, foreign policy, monetary issues, etc. Now, unlike the US, individual republics, states in the USSR had no real power, with the federal government controlling nearly all aspects of life. Many people still use the terms Russia and USSR almost interchangeably, simply assuming that Russia is a post-communist reincarnation of the Soviet Union. Yet, Russia was technically one of the 15 republics that comprised the USSR. To be fair, it was massive, and indeed the dominant one, yet it was still just another republic. Imagine that California, New York, Texas, and DC merged into one massive state. Let's call it New Texifornia, with 90 million people representing 27% of the US population. Still, Russia represented a larger percentage, 43 to be exact, of the total population of the USSR. Yet, New Texifornia would be by far the most dominant state in the Union, having the greatest landmass, population, natural and financial resources, and political power. That was the role played by the Russian Federal Republic within the USSR. Now, imagine that the US federal government grows weaker and weaker, eventually offering states an alternative to secede from the Union. Many smaller states that felt marginalized, yet capable of conducting their economic affairs independently, might choose to secede. Soon enough, the leaders of New Texifornia would also decide that they really don't need the central government since they represent almost 1/3 of the Union's power. While this is an imperfect parallel to the US, this is exactly what happened in the USSR during the last years of the Union, weakened by low oil prices, the main source of hard currency, as well as by the market reforms launched by the new and improved communist government of Mikhail Gorbachev. The Soviet Union was in a rapid economic decline. Gorbachev decided that by giving the Soviet republics the rights of self-determination while unleashing the forces of his Perestroika, a series of well-intended yet totally naive economic reforms, he could create the Eastern European version of the US. Gorby had little doubt that after receiving their independence permission, that grateful republics would choose to remain as a part of the new and reformed Union. Instead of lifelong gratitude from the newly liberated republics, he got a bunch of separatist movements all over the country. Baltic republics announced their desire to completely exit the Union, and so did others. But what really shocked Gorby is the pillar of the USSR, the Russian Republic itself, also decided to get the heck out of the Union. Guided by nationalists and populist leaders such as Boris Yeltsin, Russia announced that they can do just fine on their own. And soon, all the republics were able to exit the Union on a perfectly legal and constitutional basis. And then the Union was no more. One thing I did not tell you is that many larger republics were themselves federations, with ethnic, national, and religious enclaves that were called autonomous territories. Unlike the republic, they did not receive a constitutional right to become independent, yet many of them, Chechnya in particular, felt that they deserved this opportunity no less than, say, Latvians or Estonians. Baltic republics were occupied by Soviet troops and were forced to join the Union. But Chechnya was also occupied by the Tsarist government on a number of occasions. Then, after the collapse of the Tsarist regime in 1917, Chechnya, along with Ingushetia and Dagestan, declared independence from Russia and formed a single state, United Mountain Dwellers of the Northern Caucasus. The Red Army put an end to this nonsense, forcing them to join the new communist paradise. And it's not like Russians were great hosts and loved Chechens all that much. In fact, one of the masterpieces of Russian poetry, written by Mikhail Lermontov, has a line that is known to virtually every Russian soul, back then and now. It can literally be translated as, "An evil Chechen climbs the mountain while sharpening his dagger. Can you feel the love?"
Can you feel the love tonight?
Then came World War II, where many Chechen fighters had proved themselves heroically in the ranks of the Red Army. Yet a slightly paranoid Stalin, who saw conspiracy in every corner, decided that Chechens are simply an unreliable bunch. As German troops approached the Caucasus, Stalin ordered to round up all the Chechens, as well as their neighbors from Ingushetia, and send them to a highly inhospitable climate of the birthplace of Borat, Kazakhstan. And instead of buying them all first-class train tickets, he loaded them onto cattle cars, where over 23% of the population perished during their journey to hell. Only after Stalin's death, Khrushchev allowed Chechens to return home. So it's hardly a surprise that Chechens had a desire to become independent, especially after they located some oil reserves on their territory. While Yeltsin was preoccupied solidifying his constitutionally shaky position of the Russian Federation as a legal successor of the USSR, as well as his own presidential powers, Chechens seized the moment. Led by the recently retired Major General of the Soviet Army, Johar Dudayev, proponents of independence in Grozny, capital of Chechnya, overthrew the local government, thus dissolving the old Soviet-era Chechen-Ingush Autonomous Republic. Dudayev remains one of the most controversial figures in this story to this day. Clearly, he was not the Robin Hood fighting for his own people, yet he was undoubtedly a brave leader, with some interesting biographical footnotes. In the late 80s, he was a commander of the Soviet garrison of Tartu in Estonia. He learned Estonian, which was highly unusual in those days, and refused to turn his troops against Estonian independence movements. In October 1991, Dudayev was confirmed in his new position as the president of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, immediately declaring the republic's sovereignty and its independence from the Soviet Union. Predictably, the Russian Federation that acted as a legal successor of the USSR did not recognize Chechen independence, thus setting itself on a collision course with Dudayev's government. We will continue in the next episode. Please dial in, like, and subscribe to my channel, Rebels and Revolutions.